Jai Sri Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, so you got your Bhagavad Gita's there. So Mother Lavanga Latika, she has a hand up. Let me just get some context where we left off last week. Okay. Kamajambudi Yukta he. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's make up some time. We've lost a few minutes. Go ahead, Mother. Text 51.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
quick note. People might be waiting to get in because some are saying they can't get in.
Really? Well, I can see if they're trying to get. Oh, there's one person.
yeah, sorry. My washing machine is spinning right now. It's going to finish in a couple of minutes. So maybe I could read second.
Okay, no problem. Well,
Lower it down. You can hear the noise. It's
yeah, I can hear it. So if you just mute for now, and let's see who's out there. Mother Guy,
Maybe I can read.
you like to read? Okay.
Guy can read.
Okay.
Why
go
don't
ahead.
you first and I can go?
Guy,
You
reading?
first. You first. You first.
No, Gaia, go for it. Go for it, Gaia.
Okay, which one is it?
51. 251.
51. Let me open it. I have it somewhere
Oh,
here.
I've read this.
Okay, 51. I have it. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishina janma bandha vinirmukta param gachanti annamayam.
Actually, we read this last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we read this last week. My mistake.
52? 52?
1 second, let me just check.
Just tell me which one.
Not 52. We did 54. Yeah.
How do you remember 54?
55.
Okay.
55. Remember with the question, Krishna was speaking about someone who's absorbed in or someone who's absorbed in the self. He's absorbed in one's self-realization. And then Arjuna asks, what is that like? That's the question. Arjuna asks the question, text 54. That was someone who's above the ritualistic directions of the Vedas, someone who's in divine consciousness, someone who's, just looking here, someone who's indifferent to all the dualities of this world. So then Arjuna asked the question, Stita Bhagnasya Bhusha, how does, you remember that discussion? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk?
Walk, yeah. And how does he speak?
Yeah, remember we touched on that. And then there's some wonderful, as I mentioned last week as well, these verses are some of my favorite verses in Bhagavad Gita, this set of verses here. So we started reading those. I think, well, let's go from 50. Let's go from somewhere. 55.
Shall I read 55?
Yeah, 55. The answer that Krishna gives to Arjuna's question.
Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha sorry, I can hear myself and jump by this device. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmani evatmana atmani evatmana tushtasthita pragyastadochate. Okay. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Purport. The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualifications. because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is the word here, stita prajna. This word is used quite a few times in this section of the second chapter, stita prajna. If you look in the word-for-word translation, so someone who's transcendentally, the mind and the self is situated transcendentally, finds it was quite self-explanatory. Finds satisfaction in the self alone. Now that is mentioned more than one time as well throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So that is quite unusual, because most persons, in order to be satisfied, you have to, the senses have to meet the sense objects. Yeah, you have to see something, go somewhere, taste something to actually see. The illusion of material life is that you have to do something externally to feel satisfaction internally. No, but someone who's in, let's say, Krishna consciousness, in spiritual consciousness, they're satisfied with their, as another verse that describes, they're satisfied with their Krishna consciousness. Anyway, any questions? I've got a few things coming on my phone. Let me turn the volume off.
Oh, can you send to Madhumangal? I forgot. Probably.
Mother Mungo is can't come because he's at the temple.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Problem. Okay.
Okay.
Someone says they left the meeting and can't get in anymore. Nanda Vallabhi.
Oh, someone's trying to get in, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Shall we let them in? All votes?
Please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Now I've got to Krishna. There's a lot happening tonight. Let me get, where's the Zoom thing? The Zoom. Yeah. Okay. Admit Nanda Vallabhi. Yes, Hare Krishna. She is now joining. Hare Krishna. So imagine this culture of Zoom. Hare Krishna. What would we do without it at present? Hare Krishna. Yeah, so, okay.
Yes.
So stita prajna, someone who's situated in the self. This is Krishna's immediate answer to Arjuna's question. Yeah. Yeah, I think we read this last week as well, but anyway, no harm reading this again. All right, let's read text 56. Are you ready, Mother Lavanga? Is this,
Yes,
if you
thanks.
stop spinning? Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Text 56, yeah?
Yes.
Vignana su keshu vigataspira vitaraga bayakroda stita dir munir uchite. One who is not disturbed in mind even admits the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger. He is called a sage of steady mind. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from another Muni. He cannot be called Muni in the strict sense of the term. Nasavrisir Rasya Matam Nadbinam Mahabharat Vana Purvat 313117. But a Stita Muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary Muni. The Stita Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prasanta Nihesa Mano Rahantara, Stotra Ratna 43, or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Shri Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Saram Iti Na Samahatma Sadurlabha. He is called a Muni. He is called a Muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord. Thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds, and he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated to the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry, even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination.
Okay, thank you. So let me just go to see a little commentary here. The Stita Muni is both fixed in knowledge and aloof from the material world. He lives on the transcendental platform, and therefore his mind cannot be materially disturbed. Then he quotes Srila Prabhupada. Then after that, it's described about the comparison between a devotee and a Brahmavadi, someone who's situated in knowledge of Brahman. These symptoms describe a Krishna conscious person, but they may also describe one who is liberated but not Krishna conscious. So there's different levels of liberation. Okay, so again, he can realize the aspect of eternity as in comparison to the temporary nature of the world. And in that sense, in that realization, there is a great sense of relief from the threefold miseries. They sometimes they're known, we've heard the word Atmarama, but they may not be Krishna conscious. They're just conscious of the Brahman aspect. You know, we have the Brahman, Prabha, and the Bhagavad. Yeah. So continue reading here. An exalted devotee is unaffected by material happiness or distress because his consciousness has nothing to do with matter. But one who is simply liberated in Brahman may be neutral in relation to the material world or having no positive engagement in Krishna consciousness. Thus, these symptoms are applicable to both personalists and impersonalists. So Prabhupada emphasizes, of course, how they apply to personalists. So you're going to read this, you're going to see this if you read in books or you hear people speak about attainments of yoga, you read books on meditation, then they're going to speak in the same vein as this, you know, not being affected by the miseries of the world, you know, being kind of a sense of detachment and indifference. But what Prabhupada will probably mention in Purport's coming, I'm sure he will, is that, or perhaps I'll ask the question, what's the danger of what is a possible, or what's a possible consequence of someone who's absorbed in Brahman without Krishna consciousness? There's two ways one might go.
he kind of merges with the.
Yeah,
He
well,
merges then, right?
yeah, well, he thinks he merges. He or she thinks
Yeah.
he merges. It's called vimuktamaninas, where they become liberated within the mind.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. And also because there's no engagement, there's no practical
Really.
engagement. And the nature of the soul is to be active in loving service to the Lord. So this temporary suspension of activity under the name of Brahman realization, very difficult to maintain.
Yes,
That's
they
why
get bored.
Prabhupada, yeah, he would speak of those who so-called realized Brahman, then they come down to the philanthropic activities. Like, for instance, there's more than one politician, even presidents, leaders of India, where we hear many stories of yogis who come down from, say, the Himalayas, and they begin to cash in on their yogic achievements, or they become politicians. So some don't, some stay in their meditation. But anyway, but eventually they have to be engaged because they're not attached to the lotus feet of the Lord. So that will probably be mentioned later. But here, these verses, these are good verses to point people to. This is a type of preaching that most book distributors, this is how we explain the books to most people. How to get happiness within. Because I always say that this yoga is about getting happiness within, because most times for happiness, we have to go outside ourselves. We have to spend something. We have to do something. But this book tells you how to be satisfied with the self. So what we're saying is right, but we ultimately know this ultimate satisfaction is to be Krishna conscious. Yeah. So yeah, any other questions or comments about this? Prabhupada is, as is said there, as Guru Jamprabhu said, Prabhupada is more alluring to the Krishna conscious person. That's just a side, that's just a consequence of being conscious of Krishna, is that one is automatically detached from the material world. They don't have to have a separate program of learning to be detached. It just happens as a natural course. Yeah, I like this as well. And for the service of the Lord, he's always daring and active. That's definitely very much Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. Okay. Anything else we can bring out from here? Well, perhaps one thing in our life, we're going to face success. Also, we're going to face success in our endeavors, and also we're going to face being unsuccessful in our endeavors. Yeah. But what stays the same is our Krishna consciousness. Yeah. We don't become depressed. Well, perhaps we do become depressed, but hopefully we shouldn't become depressed, and we should continue in our activities of Krishna consciousness. Why? Because hopefully we have some level of a Shakti, some level of loving attachment to Krishna. So regardless of what's going on in this world, the good and the bad, whatever it may be, heat and cold, happiness and distress, loss or gain, fame and infamy, all these things are mentioned again and again in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, the self-realized soul, the Krishna conscious person, is not affected. Whereas in a material platform, persons are very much affected by what they may gain or what they may lose. That's their whole existence. Yeah. All right. Let's read 57. Anupama, Mavi, you have your hand up there.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Yat sarva rana viheshana tattat prapte subhashyamam nibham data na devasti tasya prajana pratishtita. In the
Yeah,
material
something like
world,
that.
sorry.
That's a bad
In the
thought.
material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. There is always some upheaval in the material world which may be good or evil. One who is not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil, because the world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil, because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called technically samadhi.
Okay. So there is no bad in essence, because one's conscious of Krishna. Because one's conscious of Krishna, one is not, is just concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Yeah. Any questions about this? Is much the same as being explained here. Krishna is explaining it to Arjuna in different ways.
Prabhu, can I please ask a question
Yes.
for clarification?
Please, yes.
Prabhu, is there another meaning for samadhi as well? Because this one says, one who's situated in perfect transcendental position. What about, say, when Guru Maharaj took a samadhi? So how do you explain that then?
Say that again. How does the Guru might say that last part again?
When when Bhakti Swami went into samadhi, so that would be a different meaning to what this samadhi is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's yeah. Now samadhi has, and here specifically, it can mean, in the most general sense of the term, that one is always thinking of, for example, Krishna's service.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
one is absorbed in making garlands for Krishna and thinking about that, or preaching. Prabhupada would often sometimes very generously describe that as the devotees are in samadhi. But then there is another more deeper samadhi, which is the progressive attainment of smaranam. There's different stages of smaranam.
Okay.
Where one, for instance, in regards to chanting the holy name or remembering Krishna, where one becomes unaware of even their body. They're absorbed in the spiritual world. Just like we hear stories of nowhere. Is it one of devotee? Perhaps someone can mention his name as I tell the story, if they know. He was meditating in his bhajan. He was meditating on the holy pastimes between the cowherd boys and the cowherd girls. Rasikananda, I think. And he came out of his meditation and he was actually covered in different colored dyes.
Oh, wow.
He was in samadhi. Another description of samadhi is in the Nectar of Devotion, that well-known story of the devotee who was cooking and making sweet rice for Krishna.
Yeah.
It was all in his mind. So that's more the technical samadhi. But samadhi, when it comes to Maharaj's entering into samadhi, it's just it's kind of a euphemism of that term, samadhi. Now they've entered into. So it's called samadhi. They have entered into a complete state of Krishna consciousness. They have perfected their life, and now they've entered into a complete Krishna conscious state.
Yeah.
Samadhi, yeah.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Yeah, Shivaram Swami Maharaj mentions in, I think, Sankappakamudi, which we'll be reading, in praise of samadhi, and he describes it, all these different types of samadhi, etc.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we hear that Maharaj has gone into samadhi. Yeah. All right. Let's read text 58. Perhaps I'll have a read. Yada samharati chayam kuma agni vashavashaha indra indriyatebhyas tasya pagan patishtataha. So anyone can guess, I guess you got your Bhagavad Gitas, kumu. How does he interact with the world, which is always surrounded by the sense objects? Well, here it is. One who is able to withdraw his senses from the sense objects, as a tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. The test of a yogi devotee or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses, and thus they are directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question of how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do nots and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up its senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of a Krishna conscious person are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always active in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. Okay, so this is very interesting. Any immediate questions here or comments? There's quite a bit that's being explained here for our well-being. So what sure we have experienced, or what one will experience once they've made particular vows. So we've all made vows of, for instance, to your 4 regulative principles. Yeah. But our senses haven't made the vows of following the 4 regulative principles. We, the soul, have, but his senses haven't. So our senses are maybe, to one degree or another, attracted to the sense objects. Yeah. So one will the soul, or we will experience that. We will feel that desire. We may do. Depends on the level of our purity. But here it's describing if we are, we have a strong sadhana, we are like a yogi, as Prabhupada says, the test of a yogi or a devotee is that they can feel that, they can see that within themselves, but they do not let they do not entertain. They are able to withdraw their thoughts from meditating in the way that the senses want them to meditate. You understand? So they bring one's senses in and control oneself. Yeah. Just like, I gave it another example. I think I've given this example before. I've had experience because I used to be, before I joined, I was quite a music fan. So I used to spend a lot of time listening to music and things like that. And so I had actually hundreds and hundreds of called LPs, you know. And there's different music which are kind of in different parts of my life. So when I hear those songs again, my mind goes where I was at that time. But at some point, I'm able to control and bring my senses back under control and not let my mind go where it's conditioned to go when I was last associating with that sound vibration. Do you follow? Now, as we become more purified, we will become, what's the word? We will become naturally the battle or the awareness of the senses going astray will not be there so much. We will be, as saying, we will be kind of innocence, one word to describe it, but one, because of the purity of their heart, the purity of their mind and heart, they have no, their senses are purified. So the senses are only going to take refuge in Krishna conscious things. But anyway, this is quite a good example to remember. One who's able to withdraw his senses from the sense objects as a tortoise draws its limbs within a shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. But then when it comes to our Krishna conscious activities, we can readily use our ears and our nose and our sense of touch to engage in Krishna's service. Yeah, it's just like we take prasadam. But having said that, even then, there is a point when taking prasadam may be an impediment for our spiritual life. Yeah, if we're habitually eating too much prasadam. Yeah, sometimes it happens. Like I remember one, Kalyapani Prabhu. Remember Kalyapani? He's a Prabhupada disciple. English, came from a very aristocratic English background. He would speak like a lord. Interesting. Came very affluent English background, but he was devotee. He's passed away now. But he explained, he was explaining to us one day that, well, he was explaining that what happened to him, as sometimes it happens to devotees, sometimes when they're going through a really tough time in Krishna consciousness, then they take shelter of prasadam to a degree that it nearly kills them. It can be a medical problem. Yeah. When rather than taking shelter of the holy name, one actually in the name of prasadam, it's just the senses meeting the sense objects. Okay, they get benefit, they're eating prasadam, but that's the reason they're eating lots of prasadam is not because it's Krishna prasadam, it's because it's food. It's a distraction. And we see this today, isn't it? We see we see this today. People, a lot of people, when they're in stress, they just eat. Anyway, any further questions on this? I went on a bit of a sidetrack there.
I was thinking the sense object, you're going to be able to control them according
You're frozen up.
mode you are in.
Oh, yeah, obviously the only chance you got is if you're developing the mode of goodness, if your lifestyle is sattvic, the better chance you are going to have of controlling your senses, the more strongly you're situated in the mode of goodness. Because that is a characteristic of the mode of goodness, is that one's in control of the self, one's in control of the mind. You know, one is not tortured by the mind, or not taken on a mad goose chase, as they say, by the lower modes of nature. Yes. So, but the idea is we don't stop using the senses, as Prabhupada says here. We keep the senses always in the service of the Lord. Yeah, like I think I've said before, recently I've really increased my hearing and chanting while I'm going about any activity. Or if I'm not reading, I've got this thing turned on. Purport lectures, so that really helps. Yeah, we always want to keep our senses engaged in the service of the Lord.
Do they have those in the shop yet?
No, but I sent the details to someone. I think I sent, didn't I?
Yes,
Yeah, and I sent it to everybody, and I even asked if anybody wants to order it. I myself need to get it, but I did send it to Shamila. She said she'll order it, but
Yeah, perhaps
nothing
Gaia,
happened.
she
I'm not
has
sure.
she has contact with the shop.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can try it.
Anyway, I'll find out. Thank you.
Yeah, so yes, Arjuna is being taught here to use his
Like,
sense
yeah,
in the service of the Lord. Sorry?
like I was just saying, being here is so difficult to control your senses. No, not control your senses. There's so much things going on that you kind of, at times you just get fed up. Oh, I can't wait to just get back,
Being
But,
here? Where's here? I mean,
being like here in Leicester. In
oh,
Leicester.
you're in Leicester.
Yeah, I've been in Leicester for nearly a week.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, okay, this is a good question. Okay. You're doing your duty because you have to do your duty. You have to look after whatever, yeah.
Mm.
But it's so much kind of Maya stuff around. And it really drains you. Really, really drains you. You can't wait to get back to your, okay, you get up early in the morning and do your chanting and that to just keep your, at least your sadhana is done. But
Yeah, I mean,
whole day there's so much.
yeah, I mean, that's what we have to learn, because we will be in different places, in different situations in our life. So the more we can learn to always, regardless of the external situation, we can remain to some degree, don't have to use the word of aloof, or we can always always maintain our Krishna consciousness. Yeah, and just looking at the next verse, this verse is, I'm sure many of you have heard this verse. It's quite a very important verse as well. How can one actually do it? How can one actually stay absorbed in Krishna? Well, it's going to take what's described in the next verse. So someone like to read this verse, 259?
I can read, Prabhu.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Vishya nirvitante nirahasharasya dehinaha rasvarjam rasopayasya param drishtva nivartate. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Purport. Unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a deceased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of Yama, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyan, etc., is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things.
Okay, thank you. So hands up if you've heard this verse before. Yes.
Yeah, I remember Param Drishtva Nivartate.
Yeah. Param
Always.
Drishta Navati, by
Mm.
experiencing a high taste. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is another lesson as well. Although this verse we read before, Yada Samachitayam Koma Agni Vasha. It actually acknowledges the senses being attracted to the sense objects, even while one is, or after one is embarked on the path of spiritual life. But then it's describing what to do. You actually consciously withdraw that kind of, that attraction, because you understand it's not going to lead to good. It's going to lead to my degradation. So then you withdraw thoughts or feelings and you do not entertain. And in this verse, on a similar vein, again, this is, as Prabhupada explains in the Purport, this is for someone who is endeavoring for the stage of perfection. So they've taken to spiritual life, but they've still got these samskaras and memories of past sensual life. So at this stage, these, like here, though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste of sense object remains, but ceasing such engagement. So that's the stage of nishta, where you are steady in your spiritual or devotional resolve. Like today, I tuned in for a few minutes of the mass initiation at Bhaktivedanta Mana by Radha Swami Maharaj. And very nice to see devotees taking their vows. Yeah. So that means they're ceasing, but it doesn't mean they promise to follow the regular principles, that the thoughts of breaking the regular principles will not pass through their mind. But they see such engagements. And how can they see such engagements? Not just by a strength of keeping the senses still, but actually one experiences a higher sensation of peace and happiness by not engaging in materialistic sense enjoyment. Yeah. So in the commentary here, again, Buddhajan is referring to a transcendentalist renunciation. So that's transcendentalists in general. They do have a higher sense of joy from their achieved position of meditation or detachment from the world. But it's especially true of a Vaishnava who's actually serving Krishna, and the joy that is beyond comparison doesn't compare to the so-called jnani. But restrictions are there in the beginning, as Prabhupada says in the Purport. Yeah. But any questions about this? Any comments? Restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. Then he automatically loses taste for power things. Yes. And mentioning here the next verse is going to be describing if you don't control your senses, what's the consequences? Yeah. Well, actually, the next verse is a warning to be on the lookout, to be on the guard. Why? Because the senses are very strong. Yeah. And even of someone, anyway, I'm just going over the next verse. But there's a verse later on that describes the senses can, just like you throw a ball, the senses can all of a sudden overwhelm one very quickly and very suddenly. Yeah, one can become overwhelmed. Yeah, by the mode of passion. Yeah. Anyway, describe. So let's read the next verse. Oh, let's check time. Yeah, we've got some time.
I was thinking just a little. I was thinking that the restrictions are there, purification is there, because we've been in this material world and we so materially conditioned that we tend to go for sense gratification so quickly that this
Yeah.
conditioning is that these restrictions are there for us to get back to our
That's it.
constitutional position, you know.
Yeah, it's called the regulative principles of freedom.
Yeah,
I think that verse is coming up as well in this section of verses. It sounds like a contradiction. The regulative, it means you regulate and you control your interaction with the sense objects, and that will lead to freedom. Yeah. Now let's read the next verse. Let's anyone like to read?
Yeah, I'll read again.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
60.
60. Yatato hi api konteya purus asya vipaschita indriyani pramatani harani prasadam. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they are forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses, but in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Visvamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sense enjoyment, although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Ramanujacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, "Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it, and I spit at the thought. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man has satisfied its hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarish has also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai Mana Krishna Vindayor, Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunar Nivarnane."
Okay. So here, Krishna is now making a comparison between a Gani and someone who's conscious of him. The Ganis, they're not, they can fall down at any moment at their platform of so-called perfection. But devotees who have reached perfection, who have reached the higher stages of Krishna consciousness, they can never fall down. Yeah. And here the example given, think we all know the story, Visvamitra Muni, and Prabhupada quotes Yamunojacharya. Again, he's someone who's, he's experiencing the memory of his past sensual life as a king, but then he turns away from it. So when it says here, in this verse, says, "Since my mind has been engaged in service of the Lord, and I have enjoyed ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman," so that means that those thoughts are coming to him just by sangha, just by the impressions coming from his past activities. Those chain of thoughts still come. But when it says my face at once turns away from it, he's speaking about withdrawing the senses within, just like the tortoise. And I spit at the thought. He has absolutely, in comparison to what he's experiencing now, he has no what is called, he has no time whatsoever. And almost even there's a sense of adversement here, being somewhat adverse, but it's not exactly adverse because he's attached. this is the mood of the comparison between material life and spiritual life. For him, there is no comparison. It actually means nothing for him. So he can easily just, Prabhupada will pronounce his spite at the full. Prabhupada will quote this verse quite often. I learned this verse one time, so it's good to see it again here. But any questions or comments on this? As another example of anyone can tell the example of someone else who was meditating.
Haridas Thakur.
Well, he passed the test.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's the point. Yeah, he passed the test. Yeah, and Haridas Thakur is often given as the devotee co-example as compared to the Gyani. When even Maya Devi herself came, the personification of all material attraction to be found in the whole material universe was personified in the form of a woman. And and he wasn't, yeah, and we know the story. She
Lord
begged for
Shiva?
his mercy. Yeah, Lord Shiva.
Shiva, right?
Yeah. So what about Lord Shiva? He also give him.
Mohini Murti, when Krishna appears.
Yeah, actually, I just read that yesterday in my Bhagavatam reading. I just read that story. I read that story, and the Lord Shiva at the end, he's quite, he's not ashamed in a sense. He gives all glory to the powerful or the glories of the Lord, who could even take on a form to attract even him. Yeah, so Lord Shiva. But I was thinking of anyone. Yeah, anyone can. I mean, I know his name, so I'll ask a question. He was meditating under the water.
Sabari Muni.
Sabari Muni. Yeah, another example that we can think of. That's Sabari Muni. He just saw two fish and he became agitated. I think he came out and married
50 daughters of a king.
Yeah, he married 50 daughters of a king.
Yeah,
that's quite a story as well, because he'd been underwater for a long time, so he didn't look very pleasant. So when he went to the king and asked
he mystically changed his looks.
but when he first went, the king, seeing him, sarcastically said, yeah, you can surely marry any one of my daughters that actually wants to marry you, chuckle, because all his skin, he'd just come out the water for I don't know how many years, and he looked like a disgusting ascetic. So of course none of the daughters were interested, but then by his mystic power he transformed himself into a dashing young man, and they was all wanted to marry him. That's the whole. So from that he got entangled in material life. Then at the end he again took to the path of a yogi, of renunciation. All right. So yeah, the senses are so strong and impetuous. So in the commentary it mentions, let me just read it again. Krishna is telling Arjuna, do not give up work, do not become a Gyani, a man who simply discriminates between matter and spirit. Okay, so we often speak about that, but we have to go further. We have to develop a taste for Krishna. Yeah, Krishna is showing Arjuna the defect of Gyan. So we have to go further and become attached to Krishna. All right, so let's pause there, and we've only got a pause for one day. Tomorrow we'll continue with this, and Krishna is now going, the next verse he's going to describe the glories of one who actually takes on the fight and wins the fight of controlling the senses. What is in store for those? Yeah, those persons. Okay, so let's pause there for today, and let's start with text 61 tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Hare Krishna, everyone who's here. Hare Krishna, and
Hare Krishna.
look forward to
Hare
being with you
Krishna.
tomorrow. Either I will send an invitation or Nova Sahachari.
Yeah.
She
Yeah, I
remembered.
thought-
She texted us in the group that she forgot.
Okay, no
She'll
problem.
remember tomorrow because she's not working. Or maybe she's, I don't know.
Okay.
Stop take.
All right, I pressed the red button, then
Okay.
we're all going to disappear in our little world.
Bye.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Oh.